Horace Mann, an American education reformer born in 1796, said, "A teacher who is attempting to teach without inspiring the pupil with a desire to learn is hammering on cold iron." This, this is an ambigram done by John Langdon. Uh, it embodies how I look at teaching and being a teacher. I believe teaching and learning are so intertwined that the best way to learn is to teach. Now, this is the one of the sections out of this book I wrote 10 years ago, and this is under there's 49 sections, 7 chapters, and this is out of the chapter, Who Are You? Um, and I'm going to do some background video of myself and a friend, Allen Ginsberg, who I believe I basically taught to play Frisbee when he was very young. And I say that because I believe over 95% of the time that he spent playing Frisbee has been with me. And we always have a pretty good time. So last time I was there, it was a bit rainy, so I was able to book a gymnasium, and we had a nice short session, and I videoed some of it. So that will be some of the background video. This is one of the things that I use to demonstrate to people how important it is to be a coach when you teach. I've got 2 corks here. You can see one has more printed on it than the other. And I'm going to take them and from the armpits of my hand and change hands. It looks easy, but get a couple corks and try it. I'll show you how to do it at the end of this video, or link to another video that I've done on how to do it. When people try it normally, it's very, very difficult, but I can teach you in about 30 seconds if I stand behind you and take your hands and do it. That's the advantage of having a teacher. Teaching people how to teach others is, I believe, one of the most underrated ways to help people learn. Over the last 40 years, I've taught thousands of people very specific skills with quite a bit of success. I had many, many people come up to me years later and say the things that they learned working with me has benefited them in lots of different ways in their lives, professional, personal, and it's very rewarding to hear that kind of stuff. One of my biggest breakthroughs was getting the student involved in teaching others right from the start, and I'll outline the details later. First, some theory. Fun inspires people to learn. It's been said that teaching is 1/4 preparation and 3/4 theater. A great movie about an inspirational teacher is Dead Poets Society. Robin Williams is very theatrical and enthralls his students with a subject that for most teen boys would be quite boring: poetry and literature. A good teacher can open up interests you would never normally seek out. Teachers are also the best way to avoid bad experiences. An experience is the worst teacher. You do the test first and you get the instruction later. Oops, should have done it that way instead. This is why to be a teacher, you must be a historian first. You must commit to continuous learning of past and recent history. There were many people that predicted the financial crisis of 2008 because it's not the first time it's happened, and all the circumstances from history pointed to a financial crisis. Those that predicted it were good students and possibly good teachers, but obviously not good enough leaders. For starters, to be a good teacher, you need to be a good student or follower of other teachers. Going to school is easier than real life, and teaching is the next best thing to being a student. The problem with most kids, I believe, today is that they don't realize this because they don't ever have to do hard work when they're young. I grew up relatively poor family, and I started picking wild berries and selling them door to door when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I then got into doing yard work for neighbors and got my first real job when I was 13, which was underage at the time, working in a chicken hatchery after school and on the summers. It was hot, dirty, and sometimes very disgusting. I gained a real appreciation. Oops, that was GoPro going off. I gained a real appreciation for going to school because school was clean, cool, and mostly interesting, especially when I got into upper grades and university where you could choose a lot of electives. I would have stayed in school forever if I could have been paid for it, but because I was relatively poor most of my school years, I wanted to make some big money, and I didn't see it in teaching. Boy, was I wrong. Look at all the self-help gurus and seminar leaders that make a killing today. I needed some out-of-the-box thinking back then to realize that there's a lot of money in teaching out of the classroom box. And as it turned out, most of my advantage in my professional life was my love for learning and teaching. I learned more about sales and how to teach it than many of my colleagues and advanced quite fast. I ended up working as a teacher after all. I'm sure you've had the experience of trying to teach someone else something mildly difficult. If you really care about what you're doing and you care about the other person's success at learning what you're trying to teach them, you will give a lot of thought to how best to teach that skill or topic. In the process, you, the teacher, invariably learn more than the student. Teaching is one of the classic win-win scenarios. Teaching people new things is one of the most fun and fulfilling things you can do when it improves their lives, and especially if you can get paid for it. It's been said that a doctor is a shortcut to health, a coach is a shortcut to peak performance, and a teacher is a shortcut to knowledge. I've always liked three-dimensional puzzles, particularly because the simple ones can be used to demonstrate the power of having a teacher or mentor. Many people think that salesmanship is a gift or something that you're born with. I totally disagree. There are certainly some personalities that are more suited to the profession, but because they naturally relate to people quicker. But salesmanship in general, like almost anything, can be taught and it can be learned. Unfortunately, most people never understand the significance and benefits of learning scripted presentations, or they half learn it and they go out and they try it a few times, it doesn't work, and they say, I tried it, that doesn't work. When I ask them to repeat the presentation, they can't do it. What's even more incredible is that most of the time they don't see that they can't repeat the presentation, and that could be why it didn't work. When you're teaching someone something, remember the saying, I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. Remember to try to find things that involve the students in hands-on situation to help them understand your points and make them more fun. There's a private early childhood, ages 3 to 5 school called the Little Red Wagon. It uses hands-on experience to guide children to learn. They use what they call an emergent curriculum. The week's planned around what teachers think the students are interested in and the teacher's goals. If a teacher sees that the group is interested in a particular area like dinosaurs, they could develop projects that... A teacher is a salesman of ideas. A coach is a teacher of putting ideas into action. Salesmen, teachers, and coaches all should be particularly aware of the words they use. Customers, students, and performers might forget the content of what you say, but they will remember how it made them feel. How you use or don't use your words will affect how they feel. What do you say when someone gives a wrong answer or makes a mistake? It's natural to tell them what they should have done or should have said. There's no one that can undo the past. And if you tell someone what they did wrong, they will resent you even if you're right because they can't do anything about it. Replace the word should with what they could do or say the next time to make it better. When someone presents a wrong answer, you can say, that could be right, but I'm looking for a different answer that relates more to, and then you use your subject. An alternative is to ask another question that gives a clue to the answer you're looking for. I frequently use that technique. For most people, the harshest teacher they will ever have is failure. If you believe that failure is an enemy of success, you could drag yourself or someone else further away from success by the words you use in your self-talk or to others. Questions like, why didn't I do that differently? Are a destructive use of thought. A better question would be, how can I ensure that I will prepare to do it differently the next chance I get? In most sales positions, other than a shop attendant where the prospect comes to see you, failure is the norm. You call on many more prospects than actually buy. Failure comes only when you fail to teach yourself something about the experience of someone not buying and move on to the next potential buyer. One of the first things that new salespeople need to be taught is not to be afraid of failure. Failing to try is possibly the greatest failure. If you don't make the attempt, you cannot succeed. In 1915, Ty Cobb, famous baseball player, set what was then the all-time record for stolen bases in a season with 96 steals. 7 years later, Max Carey set the second best record with 51 stolen bases. Amazingly, Carey failed only 2 times in 53 attempts, or only 4% of the time. He had a success rate of 96%. Cobb failed 38 times in his 134 attempts, or 28% of the time. If Carey had tried as many times as Cobb, his failure rate would have gone up, but in all likelihood, he would have set a record that would stand today. Teach people to take a chance. I always try to start a learning session with what is called a set induction. A set induction is something that gets people's attention and relates to the subject. I use either magic or jokes or group demonstrations or a combination of all of those. Then I make sure that everyone understands the reasoning behind what they're being asked to learn and the benefits to them. Then I make sure that everyone is personally involved at least once every 7 minutes. The technique that I used to train people to learn a script while demonstrating a vacuum cleaner was to try to have groups of 4 to 5 people and do a 7-minute section, explain why certain questions are used in certain ways. Everyone is encouraged to applaud at the end of the quote performance to reinforce the performer's endocrine level and make him or her want to repeat the experience. Everyone is taught to write down as many things as they can see the person, quote, performing did right, not wrong. It's easy to see what people do wrong. It's not easy to see what they do right. Again, the positive reinforcement for the performer is repeating what they did right. And this causes the observer to pay attention while the performance is going on and embed the right behavior quicker because they're looking for what is important and writing it down. We then go around the group and each person says what they think the performer did right, ending up with me, the teacher / coach, showing them how to do it better or say it better again. This allowed me to create the top 1% of all the salespeople in the company I was working with. Out of 10,000 salespeople worldwide, I had the top 5 or 10 salespeople in my office every month for over 10 years. A Latin proverb says, quote, by learning you will teach, and by teaching you will learn. Look for teachers to learn from and be one. John F. Kennedy, the famous American president who was assassinated, said, quote, leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. Close quote. Find a teacher that you can learn leadership from, which is the next section. If you could teach anything to anyone, what would it be and to whom?